it's just an empty board.
Yeah, sometimes, one player makes a move, walks away, and the other one,
Still
is
not there.
still not there. So that also happens. The game might still be going on, but there's no one there for a bit. Okay, so let's quickly think about this move, bishop e5. So what exactly does Magnus not like about knight takes d4? Well, looks kind of clear to me that this is not as promising as maybe some other options, because there's no direct way for me to win this pawn back. Of course, I could just go bishop c7, opening up the scope for the rook, but this would just allow simple development by white. And again, I think now white is ready to just, properly develop his position, and there's no clear compensation at all. So taking on d4, not to be so recommended, and that's why he didn't play it. And after bishop e5, obviously the main question is what happens if knight takes c6, right? So knight takes c6, b takes c6, and Magnus's idea is that still this bishop over here is struggling to be developed, and
it's not easy to develop it. You need to move the rook from a1, push the b pawn, and then
I can't actually do anything with my b pawn right now. So I would like to play, for example, rook b1, like you suggested, but I think this also runs into an immediate problem with g6. Now,
and bishop f5 coming next move.
Exactly, and even if you put the queen on f3 after bishop f5 hitting the rook, you think that maybe e4 is a good idea.
And that's a nice little trick.
Yes, but then bishop takes e4 actually works, and this double bishop sack actually gets you to win the queen because of the check on the king. So, very interesting pawn sacrifice by Magnus, in my opinion. It really took a different course altogether. It's actually a very positional one. Unlike me, he's not trying to mate white here. He's just trying to show that with only a few pieces more developed, he makes it very hard for his opponent to further improve his position. And if it's up to black next move, he's just going to create more pressure against his b2 pawn. And the same kind of problems with rook b1 not being possible and so on, they still apply. What exactly is the added value of a3 compared to not having it? Still a little bit unclear, but the position seems to be quite full of compensation now, in my opinion. So
we
that
might
a3
see
move,
about this b3 weak square on move 50, perhaps.
Yeah, and perhaps something to ask one of the players later on if they make an appearance, because that's an interesting little detail.
Look at Nepomniachtchi, because I think sometimes we have this also this concept that chess players have a poker face, but Nepomniachtchi is not the kind of guy, is he?
No, I think Nepomniachtchi is not the poker face type of guy, and in that aspect also, for example, Hikaru Nakamura is kind of famous for not being particularly strong when it comes to the poker face. He seems kind of bored almost to me, to be honest. I think he's mostly annoyed because he thought that this idea here with knight to b3 really put some pressure on Magnus, and Magnus seems to have found a way in which the pawn sacrifice for the moment looks sort of justified. And of course it's unpleasant when your opponent finds a way to stop you from developing. It kind of also gives you no easy moves forward. So now he needs to think, how do I keep my pawn, or at least give it back in a way that maybe I can retain some advantage? In these kind of positions, what I would personally try to do is really look for, okay, I see I have a development problem, my pieces are a little bit discoordinated, so if I can give back a pawn but get some kind of positional pressure, or maybe take over the development advantage or whatnot, that could actually be a very good way of exchanging my advantage into something a little bit more sustainable, a little bit easier to play. So that's what he would love to do. The question is it available? And I think we're going to find out in the course of the next few moves. Right now, very important decision, do you take on c6, or maybe do you keep the knight on the board and maybe attack this bishop, when I think Magnus will play bishop f6, keeping this pressure? That's really a question for him to answer.
It's a fascinating round that both the world champion sacrifices a pawn, Sergei Karyakin, the challenger, he sacrificed 2 pawns.
Yeah.
Everybody, which was the last position? So actually,
Magnus was after bishop to e5, and actually something happened here, so that's a good suggestion.
Many moves happened. Bishop
this is
e5.
where we left off last time. So here I said either knight f3 or knight c6. He took on c6 and played the move bishop c4, aiming for f7 somewhat, but mostly just thinking about getting the queen back to e2 and then somehow finding a way to start developing this bishop and following up with that rook. So Magnus played g6, queen e2, and changing the bishop. Now, I think really the question here is like, Magnus Carlsen is a pawn down, and he's really playing as though nothing special is going on at all. Why? How is this possible? Why does this work? It still works because, again, it's not clear how white wants to develop. But I must say, with the light squared bishop off, this move, rook to b1, is now possible. Earlier, we always saw an issue with bishop to f5 being there. Now it looks like a healthy move that was played by Nepomniachtchi. And here, Magnus played rook b8.
So the question for white is if he has time for pushing the b pawn and then going bishop b2.
Exactly. So really, b3 obviously loses the pawn. So b2, b4 is what Jan has to think about. And I don't immediately see the problem with this move. It could be something simple like c5, a5, but that would probably allow bishop to b2. So the question is really what is happening here. First of all, I think it's fair to say that in this position, Magnus Carlsen, although he might still be very much within the drawing range, I don't think he has any winning chances. So Magnus Carlsen win out almost rooted out completely at this point. There's just not enough pieces to and win back the pawn and create some sort of initiative. So, but the question is, can he comfortably draw after b2, b4?
Do you think he has this on mind that now I'm playing already for a draw and I shouldn't be too ambitious?
It could be on his mind for sure, but it's not a very happy idea,
No,
so to speak. Yeah, it's not
isn't.
something that he was planning to do at this, from the very start.
Yeah.
Although a draw with black against Nepomniachtchi is by no means a bad result, but I just don't really see how he's planning to draw it right away. Let's talk about a5 for a second, because imagine we have to allow bishop to b2. Then at least let's try to change some pawns first. Now, if we end up exchanging everything here,
Yes, in best case he will win back the pawn, in best case.
yeah, and there might be possibilities of changing the queens and getting some sort of 4 against 3 endgame, but that's just it's not a very exciting
No,
exciting
isn't.
prospect. So I think I'm going to leave Magnus figure this out for himself
And draw somehow.
and draw it one way or another, because there's a lot more exciting games going on.
Let's go to King Luke then.
Yeah, let's go to King Luke.
He's offering?
Yeah, so what I was thinking before is 4 against 3, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of switched away with it, from it, because I felt like I'm probably not seeing something, because it's Magnus Carlsen and he just doesn't go for that. I just didn't see the resource here for black, right?
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, there wasn't a real resource. He just tries to hold on to a draw here. And, okay, so queen a2, all it does, it looks very nice, very clever, but all it does is secure a bunch of traits on b2, because if you don't take with the queen here, but with the rook, then the a3 pawn is falling, right? So let's just reroute a little bit. White had issues developing the queen side, managed to change 2 pairs of pieces, got to play b4, and Magnus Carlsen just tries to actively change as many pieces as possible and go for a drawish endgame with a pawn down.
That's
so
a sad
rook e1.
scenario for the world champion, of course. This is not what he wanted.
Yeah, so this is defending the queen, so this exchange is being forced. Queen takes, rook takes. Honestly, yes, it's not a great scenario for him at all. Not just because he's not going to win, he still needs to draw this, and with 2 rooks on the board, that's a lot trickier than with 1. I think what we're going to see is probably taking in some shape or form. He could be clever and maybe try to delay it and put more pressure on the b file, let's say rook b5. But
He went a5.
okay, he went a5. Interesting.
And he's not afraid of b5 because then he might push a4.
Yeah, so b5 feels like the most complicated move, so to speak, because or almost necessary, because otherwise you might end up losing that pawn back. Of course, it's important to understand we don't really have a choice almost, because in this mass exchange it's actually black who perhaps. And the main idea is that a4, as great as it sounds, now doesn't really work because I don't have a way of defending that pawn. And again, the nice thing for white is, or for black is, he actually already got to play a move like g6, creating some loop for his king, whereas white, he can't actually launch a proper counter attack here because taking again fails to, win a pawn back. So after rook d3 in this position, what happens is that maybe white has to play something like rook a1, and that doesn't look like a particularly active move, so that's good news for black. I'm going to change my opinion a little bit here. Rook a1 I really don't like, so perhaps it's more, now we need to reroute it, and that's going to take a lot of valuable time.
Oh, we have a result. So that means that a5 was a draw offer by Magnus Carlsen, and it was accepted by Jan Nepomniachtchi. We have the first result.
Okay, so the players...
And I think that means that we will have a guest soon. We are hoping for Magnus Carlsen to appear here in the live commentary, or Nepomniachtchi, or both.
Exactly. So maybe the players can even analyze the game together. That would be great. Yeah, so they actually agreed to a draw. Let's quickly go there and then come back to Anish. They literally agreed to a draw after... Oh, no, actually he played king to f1, it looks like, and offered a draw. So
he offered a draw.
We can still ask him what exactly happened after b5. Perhaps, I'm guessing that, my line with rook d3 was not even the best, or at least we missed something there, and that black was not even suffering one bit. So...
Yeah, I would have been surprised actually if it was a5 and a draw offer, because Magnus, even if it's a draw position, he would not offer a draw, I think.
Yeah. So if we go to Wei Yi against Anish Giri, rook takes d6 has been played. I'm expecting either taking on h6 or queen to f4.